Yate, my relatives, hello. It's Mark Charles, and I'm sitting down for the first time in 2023 to share with you my second cup of coffee. It's a beautiful day in DC today. It's a bit cloudy, not too cold, but it is cool, maybe in the 40s or 50s. And I've had a very restful weekend and a good morning, so I'm looking forward to talking with you for a little bit, sharing a few thoughts, and getting into 2023. But before I begin, let me do like I always do, which is acknowledge I'm speaking to you from what's now called Washington, D.C. These are the traditional lands of the Piscataway, and I want to honor the Piscataway as the hosts of the land where I'm living and just state how humbled I am to be living on these lands today. So I, I have kind of an interesting name for this cup of coffee. I called it the Emancipation Proclamation, Permastress, and Puttering Around. And they're kind of three separate thoughts, but there's three things I wanted to talk about today. As you know, we're starting a new year. It is January 3rd, 2023. And it was on January 1st of 1863 that President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So you may have seen some statements going out about this proclamation and the anniversary of this proclamation and how important this proclamation was to our nation. And I wanted to just discuss some of the proclamation with you. As you know, I talk about this proclamation fairly frequently. I was in the book that I published on selling truths. It's in my speeches and my presentations. So let me first just start by sharing with you the actual proclamation. I'm going to put this into the chat comments. Hey, Mr. Phil Fox, Yate Bina, Mary and Madeline, Yate, thank you for joining me. It's good to have you here. So here's the text to the archives website that has both images as well as the text of the Emancipation Proclamation. I'm also going to share with you a statement by President Biden on the White House and his comments regarding the Emancipation Proclamation, and you can read those as well. Today, our nation is getting a bit more honest, which is we're acknowledging the Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery. And even President Biden, as well as the archives, acknowledge that it exempted huge parts of the country from freeing of enslaved peoples. But I want to talk a little bit more. And I thought one of the best ways to talk about it is just read to you a few paragraphs from our book, Unsettling Truth. This is in chapter 9, which is the first chapter we have about Lincoln. And it's on page 143. So let me go ahead and read this to you just a moment here. Page 143, the pragmatism, not the heroism of Abraham Lincoln. On August 19th, 1862, Horace Greeley, the editor of the New York Tribune, wrote an op-ed calling for the immediate emancipation of enslaved peoples. President Lincoln had already written the Emancipation Proclamation, but was not yet ready to issue it. He was concerned about the political fallout from the slave-owning states in the North. The states of Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware allowed slavery, but had not seceded from the Union. And Lincoln wanted to assure the slave owners and political leaders from those states that his true intentions and beliefs regarding the black race. So Lincoln responded to Horace Greeley with an op-ed in a letter that stated, "My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union. It is not either to save or destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that." The latter half of this quotation is engraved on a marble plaque that today hangs in the museum, the Lincoln Memorial, at the base of the Lincoln Memorial here in Washington, D.C. Abraham Lincoln declared to the slave owners of the northern states and anyone who enters the museum today that he firmly believed Black lives do not matter. And if we look at this graphic, like this is a graphic I created that actually has the engraving that's hanging at the museum at the base of the memorial that says his paramount object. It's literally stating at the Lincoln Memorial, Abraham Lincoln did not believe that Black Lives Matter. They were inconsequential in what he was trying to do with the Civil War and even with the Emancipation Proclamation. He was trying to preserve the Union. He was trying to hold this white supremacist nation together. On January 1st of 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. The wording of the proclamation was specific to limit the states, parishes, and counties from which slaves were to be freed. I'm going to just put this quote up here now so that you can see it. Let me find it. Where is it? I think it's right here. No, that's not it. Where is it? I can't believe I lost it here. Here it is. Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, except for the parishes of St. Bernard, Plaquemines, Jefferson State, John, St. John State, St. James, Assumption, Tabaroon, Lockefer, St. Mary's, and St. Martin and Orleans, including the city of New Orleans. Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, except the 48 counties designated as West Virginia and also the counties of Berkeley, Accomack, Northampton, Elizabeth City, York, Princess Anne, and Norfolk, including the cities of Norfolk and Portsmouth. So you can see his proclamation excluded Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware, and went on to state that the accepted parts are for the present left precisely as if this proclamation were not issued. Now, just to demonstrate and show you that this is actually what the text says, I'm gonna share with you the website, the archive website, where I clicked on the link for the transcript of the proclamation, and you can see it says at the bottom of this. Sorry, it's on this page. Here's the quote I just read to you, and at the bottom it says, "The accepted parts are for the present left precisely as if this proclamation were not issued." Now, what's even more fascinating, if you go on the main page I shared with you, where the archive just has some statements about the Emancipation Proclamation, let me read to you this paragraph right here. It says, "Although the Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery in the nation, it captured the hearts." It's the paragraph above that. "Despite this expansive wording, the Emancipation Proclamation was limited in many ways. It applied only to states that had seceded from the United States, leaving slavery untouched in the loyal border states. It also expressly accepted parts of the Confederacy, the Southern secessionist states that had already come under Northern control. Most importantly, the freedom it promised depended on the Union, the United States military victory." So what Abraham Lincoln was doing is he was not freeing enslaved people from any state that the Union had control of. It was only freeing enslaved peoples in states where the Union had no control because they had seceded from the Union. Even in the southern states, where the Northern Union Army had won victory and had claimed those states back, it did not free enslaved people in those states. Again, Abraham Lincoln is by no stretch of the imagination a hero. He's a pragmatist who didn't give a crap about Black lives. In his own words. Again, we need to stop honoring this man as some sort of American hero, as someone who stands up for American values. The man was vile, blatant, unapologetic, self-proclaimed white supremacist, and not even mentioning the fact that he was genocidal on top of that. towards Native nations. But that's a whole nother discussion for a different day. So can we please stop honoring Abraham Lincoln for the Emancipation Proclamation? He didn't do it because he gave a crap about Black lives. He did it to find a way to hold white supremacist states together. And the North and the South were both white supremacists. Do not for a moment allow yourself to believe that the North was fighting for the humanity and the rights of Black people. They were not. They were just as white supremacists as the Southern states were. Abraham Lincoln absolutely believed in the lie of white supremacy. He said so. He stated so numerous times. He just wanted to end chattel slavery because he saw it as a divisive component for this white union that he was trying desperately hard to hold together. So anyway, that's the Emancipation Proclamation. We just have to acknowledge that and acknowledge that we have a whole lot of work to do because this white supremacist president named Abraham Lincoln gave this white supremacist nation so many other tools that they are using to this day, including the constitutional protection for enslavement in the 13th Amendment, which led to Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and all these things that we're struggling with today. So we still have a long, long, long way to go, my relatives. Abraham Lincoln held the Union together, but he didn't do it because he gave a crap about Black people. He didn't issue the Emancipation Proclamation because he gave a crap about Black people. His goal was to save the Union. That's what he said. Those were his very words. My primary object in this struggle is not to save or destroy slavery. It is to preserve the Union. Please don't be fooled, my relatives. Anyway, so that happened. Take a sip of coffee. I subscribe to this service called Medium, which produces a lot of content and articles and interesting reading. And this morning on my Medium kind of daily newsletter, there were two articles that crossed my mind, that crossed my screen, and I read, and they interest me. And this first one I want to talk with you about here for a moment. I just put it into the chat here. It's called 2022 in a Word, Permastressed. And it's by an author. His name is, let me get his name right, Robert Britt, I believe is his name. And he's written a lot actually in the past about stress and stressors and how to seek help from anxiety. But one of the things he talked about was how after the pandemic, right, we've had 3 years of a pandemic, a global pandemic. We've had over a year of a war in Ukraine. We've had incredibly high inflation. Many people have lost loved ones, have had serious financial and work-related challenges, even food insecurity or housing insecurity, right? There's a lot has gone on. And what it's done for a lot of people is it's put people in a very high state of stress and a state of constant stress. And he talks about in his article and in his writings that stress at some level is good, right? It can help protect you. It can put you on high alert and make you very aware of your surroundings and what's going on. But when you have constant stress, it creates other health problems, lack of sleep, hypertension, or other things like that. And so there was a survey that he referenced by the American Psychological Association that looked at in the past year, I think it was, the percentage of U.S. adults who say they're stressed out. And you can see the younger the adults get, the more stress they're acknowledging. I'm wondering if this is because of kids. I don't know. I haven't read the study, but I'm wondering if if during the pandemic in the past several years, it's not just about feeding your own self and holding your own job, but it's about taking care of kids and doing online schooling and everything else. But you can see that the younger these adults get, the higher their reported levels of stress have been. And I think it's important to acknowledge, right, that this hasn't just been a stressful season. This has been a period, not just for the past year, but for the past 3 or 4 years, of almost permanent or consistent stressors hitting us at so many different levels. He acknowledges a lot of them. Some of the ones that I just labeled a few minutes ago: inflation, the war in Ukraine, work issues, and housing insecurity. All these things that have been stressors on people. And the problem is once you start kind of dealing with stress, it can very easily and quickly snowball and get worse and worse. It can affect your sleep, it can affect your health, it can affect your eating, and all these other things, and leave you in a very unhealthy place. And so I think one of the things, just even in just reading the article, and I encourage you to read it if you have a chance to read that article, but I think it's important just to acknowledge that we are in a period of constant and consistent stress. And we need to acknowledge that. We need to say, yeah, that's true. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, that we're finding ways to relieve our stress, that we're countering some of the unhealthy habits we may be picking up, making sure we're sleeping enough at night, making sure we're eating healthy, making sure we're getting exercise, making sure we have good relationships and support structures around us, making sure we're not overdoing things at work or in other places that will stress us out. And so I think the first thing is just acknowledging that, yeah, we're in a place of very consistent stress. And by acknowledging it, then we can help deal with it. And so I encourage you, if you have a chance, to read that article. I want to start doing something a little bit different that I haven't quite done before on my Second Cups of Coffee. I do it a little bit, but I want to get more consistent with my Second Cups of Coffee. I want to get more consistent with just kind of talking and extroverting and sharing some ideas and getting feedback from people. I see Billy Agnes is on here and saying, yeah, that's good, what we were just saying about stressors. It's very good to remember that. Sunny, Sunny, thanks for joining. It's good to have you on here. It's good to have this feedback. But yeah, I want to get better about just kind of getting on here and sharing some thoughts without every episode of my Second Cup of Coffee being like this monumental thing. But just having it a time where literally like going to a coffee shop can be. It can be a way where you can meet people, you can see old friends, you can catch up on things on the day, you can hear different perspectives, and you can just kind of use it as even a way to kind of get through your day. And so I want to start talking briefly, not in depth, and just sharing with you, because when I wake up in the morning, I listen to several news podcasts. I get the headlines of the day. I go through some of my news websites and I look at the stories going on. And I kind of try to get a feel for what's going on today, every day. And I want to start sharing some of those stories with you. Not to even necessarily comment on each of them, but just these are some of the things I've heard about and things that we need to be aware of that are going on. One of the things that I've heard, this is regarding the war in Ukraine. I don't actually have a link for this, but several places have mentioned it, is that Russia is beginning kind of a new strategy with Ukraine, and they're going to begin sending more and more drones into Ukraine and really trying to just physically and even psychologically wear the people out if they're under this constant threat of drone attacks and of having these stressors. I think Russia's hoping that this will begin to wean them from their support of their own country fighting this war, and hoping that Ukraine will give up or something. And the longer this war goes on, the more I have thoughts about it. I'm getting very, very tired of Putin and his narcissistic ways and his manipulation. But I want to just, hearing these stories reminded me to continue to be in prayer for and look for ways to support the people of Ukraine. Because, right, if we think here in America we are in permanent stress, imagine the people living there where they've been living in a war zone for a year now. And that has a massive toll on your physical and your psychological well-being and health. So that's one of the stories that I heard this morning. Another story is today is the first day of the new Congress, and you have probably been hearing stories about Kevin McCarthy fighting very hard to become the next Speaker of the House. And yet, because they have such a very narrow majority of about 4 seats in the House, he really needs all of his party to support him, because the entire House, Democrats and Republicans, elect the Speaker. And so if the Democrats are unanimous in opposing him as Speaker, then he needs almost all of the support of the Republicans. And I read today that this could be the first time in over 100 years, I think, that the Speaker may not be elected on the first ballot, and they may need to have several ballots of going through to get him elected, because there's some very conservative factions of House GOP membership who are actually pushing him to be even more conservative than he already is. And so there's just like there was division in the Democrats in the last couple of years when they had a very slim majority in the Senate. Now the Republicans have the same thing in the House, and so we're going to see this divisiveness within their party, just like we saw in the Democrats for the last 2 years. And so that's happening today. So pay attention to that. Another story that caught my eye this morning, this was on one of the political websites that I look at, it's on Politico. And you've all heard about Republican governors from Arizona and Texas and Florida sending their migrants, people at their borders, to places like Chicago, New York, and Washington, D.C. I talked about that a few days ago. But now there's word that Colorado is intending to send their migrants to New York. And the challenge is both the governor and the mayor of Denver and the governor of Colorado, who are both, I believe, Democrats. These are Democrats planning to do this. I don't know if it's as much of a political stunt as what it is for DeSantis and Abbott and the other Republican governors, but it is definitely continuing to treat these migrants as pawns in this game. And this is something that is unacceptable, right? These are people coming to these lands looking for protection, and literally we're shipping them around and saying, we don't want to deal with it. You deal with it. You deal with it. You deal with it. And I would agree we need to learn how to deal with this as a national issue, not as a local issue, or not even as a partisan issue. Again, I'll go back to what I've said for almost a decade now about immigration, which is without the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the center of this dialogue, whatever sort of reform or policies that you get is going to lack integrity and lack authority, because all you have is one generation of undocumented immigrants trying to figure out what to do with another generation of undocumented immigrants, and there is no integrity, there's no authority in the dialogue. And we're seeing the breakdown on both the left and the right of people who have no authority, no integrity to say anything about immigration. Again, it doesn't matter if you're building a wall to keep people up or tearing one down to let people in. If Native Americans, if the indigenous people of Turtle Island are not in the center of your dialogue, you're not going to have any sort of authority, any sort of integrity in your policy. And we're seeing that on both the left and the right now. This is a national problem. And it's because we don't have common memory. We don't deal with our past. And so we don't know how to deal with this in a healthy way going forward. You also probably heard last night in Cincinnati, Damar Hamlin, who plays for the Buffalo Bills, literally had a heart attack um, on the field. He had just completed a play where he was a part of a tackle, and he was standing up. He adjusted his helmet, and he fell back down, and he had a heart attack. And he is now in critical condition. Um, and there's a lot of yelling and screaming going on around this issue right now. But the primary thing is we need to be concerned about Damar's health and his safety. Hopefully, this will help spur more conversations. It doesn't sound like this wasn't a concussion or a broken bone or anything. This was a heart attack. So again, there's a lot of, I don't know. It's something we need to be concerned about. It's obviously something that's capturing the attention of a lot of people right now. I would encourage people not to stand on soapboxes and begin yelling about either side of the issue at the moment until we have a better understanding of know that he's doing better and his health is improving, but then B, that we understand what caused this and what the issue is we need to deal with. Obviously, football is a dangerous sport, and there are things that need to be addressed there. Whether or not this issue or this incident is an exact result of that is we're not sure, but they're not sure. But anyway, I just wanted to share that story. And then one more story I wanted to share with you, and this was just from Native News Online, and I check their headlines a lot, and this is just 4 stories that they had out today for the new year of things that we should be looking for in the new year coming out of Indian country. And I'll just highlight a few of these stories right now, but if you have a chance, go in and read this article. Let me bring it up here, at least on my screen. So one of the issues is just the potential what a potential recession, if we do have a recession in the U.S. in 2023, what that could mean for Indian country. Another story they're looking at is the Supreme Court case, Brackeen versus Holland, which is about the Indian Child Welfare Act, and that is moving through and will be an opinion coming out of the Supreme Court this year. Also, U.S. Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, Cherokee man from Oklahoma, and kind of his time in office. And then Boo Nygren, who is the youngest Navajo Nation president ever. He's inaugurated he became president of our nation in the election last year, and he is inaugurated and he's 36 years old. And so just kind of about his administration and coming into office in the Navajo Nation. Anyway, those are just a few stories that I wanted to share with you. The last story I want to talk about, and this goes into the puttering around. So we talked about the Emancipation Proclamation. We talked about permastress. And now I want to talk for a few minutes about this puttering around. So for those of you who don't know me long term, I have not worked a 9-to-5 job in probably about 20 years, maybe even 25 years. I've been working as a consultant, as a writer, as a speaker, haven't gone into an office. And I'm an extrovert and I'm a collaborator and I love working with people and I love working around people. So working from home drives me crazy, literally drives me crazy. I mean, it drives me crazy. And I've been on a constant hunt, or I don't know what to call it. I've been constantly looking for the past 20 years of how can I make my time at home more productive? How can I be a more productive? You know, when I work in an office and I go in 9 to 5, I have coworkers, I have collaborators, I have people I can extrovert with, I have people I can joke around with. I'm able to work very well in those environments, but I have a much harder time when I come back with no structure and I'm just kind of doing things, and especially it's on my own. Um, and so I've been constantly looking of how can I improve my productivity and even make my daily activities not only more productive but more enjoyable. Um, I love traveling. I love getting out. I love visiting people and talking with people, but that's not every day. And so I have a lot of time at home where I need to be productive, whether it's writing or whether it's preparing for cups of coffee or other things like that. And how can I make those times more productive? I've also been thinking more about how can I work my schedule to do more of the things that I like and less of the things that I don't like or that stress me out. How can I, fill my days better with things that give me energy instead of things that kind of suck energy from me. And I was really pondering that. And so every year in December and January, as I come up on the end of the year and look forward to a new year, I look at budget, I look at expenses, I looked at what I made last year and where my income came last year and what I need to do this year. And, I'm always kind of planning. I love that kind of planning. And as I was doing that this past year, I had these thoughts about what can I do to actually, again, invest more time and invest more energy, invest more of my resources into things that give me energy and promote my message as compared to things that suck my energy and kind of leave me dry, even in a public space. And so I was pondering that. And then this morning, in that same email that I got from Medium, that came in and talked about the permastress. There was another article in there. It was by someone who had written about a speech Jeff Bezos gave years ago. I don't know when. And it was about how he used the habit of puttering around to kind of start his days. And it said he liked to wake up early, 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, have a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, make breakfast for his children, and not begin his work day, not go into the office, even at Amazon, until like 10 o'clock in the morning. And he used those 3 or 4 hours he was at home to kind of energize him for the day. Now, I've known for years that I am the most energetic. I have my brain is the most alert. I am most excited about getting things done probably before 10 o'clock in the morning. That's when I'm those are my most productive and awake and alert hours. And I've always tried to use those, especially when I have big projects to do or writing to do. I try to use those hours before 10 a.m. To really get something accomplished and get something done. And that can really, if I do it well, that can set the tone for the whole day. And so my normal schedule is I wake up, I have some time alone, I drink my first cup of coffee and go over the news. And then my children get up and I help make breakfast and get them ready for the day. And then I take them to school and I drop them off at school by 8:15 or so. I usually don't have meetings that early. I usually don't start my meetings until 10. And so I have about an hour and a half in the mornings. Again, those are my most productive hours, but I usually use them to run errands, right? I do a lot of the grocery shopping for our family. I plan the menus. I run errands. And so I would use some of that time to do those sorts of things. And after reading this article this morning about how Jeff had that example of just using that time to energize himself for the day instead of trying to get things done, I thought maybe that's it. So one of the challenges I face is not only I'm an extrovert, and so the more I'm with people or talking or extroverting, the more my brain is actually working. It's when I'm sitting alone, staring off into space, or looking at a notepad or typing on a computer that my brain is the most cloudy and fuzzy. My brain is most alert and I'm most articulate when I'm extroverting to people and talking and engaging in dialogue. And so this morning, right, as I read this article this morning, before my daughters got up for school, I read this. And I'm like, I'm going to try that. So this morning I did. I got up and I went to one of my favorite coffee shops. If you saw me on Twitter, I put something on Twitter about that. I went to my favorite coffee shops. I bought some coffee. I had a phone call that should have had probably a few weeks ago about some publishing ideas, and just got some creative juices flowing there. And I had a very enjoyable morning. I came back, made some breakfast, sat down, talked with my wife for a few minutes while she was on a break from work, and made my second cup of coffee, and then came and sat down and got ready for it here. And I realized my second cup of coffee is actually a great way to end kind of this most alert period of my day, right? If I'm reading my news and doing stuff and hanging out with my daughters and taking them to school, and then I spend an hour and a half after that of sitting in a coffee shop or engaging with people, not about business, but just catching up on conversations over the phone. And I do that from 8:30 to 10, and then 10 o'clock, I get back to my house and I sit down at the computer and I start putting some things together for my second cup of coffee. Then the great way to end that period of the day is to get online and just extrovert, just talk, share some stuff, get feedback from people, hang out. And I have to say, this morning has been amazing. I've had a thoroughly enjoyable morning. And it's almost 12:30, 1 o'clock here now in DC, and I'm looking forward to what I'm going to do this afternoon. But I feel like I've had a good use of my day so far. So I'm going to try and get better about doing this, and hopefully one of my goals for 2022 or 2023 is to become more consistent with my second cups of coffee. So I want to get more consistent about doing my second cups of coffee almost every day, Monday through Friday, if I can. Hopefully not for real long. I'd like to actually keep it between 20 and 30 minutes. I'm pushing 37, 38 right now. But I'd like to do that. Another goal I have for this year is to get more sleep. I've been more consistent about sleeping between 6 and 6.5 hours this past year. My goal for 2023 is 7 hours. So I've already been able to do that in the first 3 nights of the year. We'll see if I can keep it up. But anyway, just a few thoughts. So that article on puttering around, if you had a chance to read that, I found it very helpful because it allowed me to give myself some freedom because I didn't have a tight schedule and I can set my schedule myself. It gives me the freedom to kind of use my morning hours doing things that give me life, that give me joy, that give me energy. And prepare for stuff that I may be more bogged down by in the afternoon, but to really enjoy my mornings and still make them productive by doing my cups of coffee and engaging on social media. So that's the plan. We'll see if it works. We'll keep doing this. Yes, the sunrise. Kelly, you're absolutely right. Watching the sunrise is a part of that. If I can get up in the morning and get out. I don't go every morning because it's cloudy probably 2 to 3 times or 3 or 4 mornings a week here. You can't see the sunrise. And then with my schedule getting my daughters to school, right now it's rising too late in the morning to watch the sunrise, get home and get my daughters to school. So the weekends, now that they're back in school, is the only time I can really watch the sunrise, and it needs to be clear. But the days are getting longer, so the sunrise is getting earlier each morning by about a minute or so. So within a few weeks, I will be able to begin watching the sunrise whenever it's clear. I won't have to worry about the time frame. But anyway, these are my thoughts, my ideas as I drink my second cup of coffee. I hope this is helpful, my relatives. This evening on my Patreon, I am going to be giving a Q&A. And on my Patreon, if you want to subscribe to that, it's the Ask Questions tier of my Patreon. I'll put the link in there. And I do about a 45-minute Q&A once a month. And you're welcome to jump on there. Any question you have about my book, about my speaking, about the stuff I talk about in my second cup of coffee, it's just a chance for people to dialogue and for us to, it's a Zoom call. And so if you'd like to join that, you can subscribe to my Patreon. And we'll be doing that this evening at 8 o'clock tonight Eastern time. I'm also have later this week, I'm going to be interviewing on my second cup of coffee. I don't know what day yet, Susie Silversmith. has told me she has time this week to come on and talk about her work regarding telling the stories of boarding school survivors and her own story. And so I'm hoping we'll have that either on maybe Thursday or Friday of this week. But and then she'll be on my Patreon as well doing a Q&A. And I'm thrilled because I reached out last week to Darren Perry, who is a former chairman of the Shoshone Nation and has been doing a lot of work to make people aware of the Bear River Massacre, which happened on January 29 of 1863. And his book, Bear River Massacre, Shoshone History, he's going to be a guest on my second cup of coffee later this month. I was able to get in touch with him, and he confirmed that he would love to join me. We don't have the exact date yet. I'm hoping to do it towards the end of the month, maybe just a day or two before the 29th. I'll see how busy his schedule is. I'm going to schedule that with him later this week. But he will be on with me for a second cup of coffee later this month. And I'm thrilled to be able to have him to have the conversation with him about his nation and his work to make sure that there's common memory about the Bear River Massacre. Anyway, my relatives, it's been great to spend this time with you this morning. Hope you have a good afternoon. Hope your first work week of 2023 goes well. Hope you enjoy time with family and relatives and as you get back into work and school schedules. But walk in beauty, my relatives. And may we all learn how to walk in beauty together. Hakone.